Welcome to another episode of Out from the Horrorbox. I'm your psychiatrist host, Dom, and this is where the Halloween franchise continues, kills, and ends. This new trilogy came after almost a decade of nothing from the dormant series, while disregarding all previous sequels in the series, including the second film, which most take along with the original. This is the last part of our 5-part deep look into the Halloween franchise, and I'll be sad to move on. Halloween's one of my favorite series of all time. I'm ready to move on though. So let's start way back at the beginning so we can make our way to the end. The Night He Came Home starts 15 years before, in the small town of Haddonfield, Illinois, on Halloween night. The 6-year-old Michael Myers murders his older sister with a kitchen knife and is incarcerated in Smith's Grove Sanitarium. October 30th, 1978, Dr. Samuel Loomis arrives at the sanitarium with nurse Marion Chambers to take the now older Myers to a court hearing to, hopefully, be imprisoned for his life. As they enter, they find patients wandering around. Loomis investigates and Michael is able to steal the car and escape. Teenager Laurie Strode drops off a key at the Myers house with Tommy Doyle, the child she is going to babysit for Halloween. Michael seeks Laurie and begins to stalk her. He now has a mechanic's jumpsuit and pale white mask. Laurie sees the masked man and tries to alert her friends Annie Brackett and Linda Vanderclock, but they dismiss her concerns. Loomis arrives to Haddonfield and pursues Sheriff Brackett, Annie's father, and explains that Michael has escaped and has returned. Brackett escorts Loomis to the Myers house and waits to see if he returns. Annie picks up Laurie to drive her to their respective babysitting gigs. Michael spies on Annie as she deals with Lindsay Wallace, the girl she is babysitting. She receives a call from her boyfriend to pick him up, to which she calls Laurie to watch Lindsay. Laurie agrees and Annie takes Lindsay over to the Doyle house. Annie goes to her car and is killed by Michael. Not long after, Linda and her boyfriend Bob arrive at the Wallace's house and find no one around. They start to make out, drink, and have sex in the upstairs bedroom. Bob goes downstairs to get more beer when Michael appears and pins Bob to the kitchen wall. Michael goes upstairs to Linda in a sheet and Bob's glasses. After teasing Michael, Linda tries to call Laurie, but she is killed by Michael, strangling her with the phone cord. Laurie goes to the Wallace's house to investigate, discovers all of her friends' bodies, and she is stabbed and falls down a set of stairs. She is able to escape back to the Doyle's house, but is chased by Michael. There, she tells the children to hide upstairs, and she waits. And she stabs an attacking Michael in the head with a knitting needle. She finds the kids and Michael appears again. She hides the kids and hides in the closet. She grabs a wire hanger and stabs Michael as he bursts into the closet. He drops his knife and Laurie uses it to stab Myers. During this time, Loomis has discovered the stolen car and starts to search the neighboring streets. Laurie finds the kids again and tells them to go down to the neighbor's house and call the police. As they flee the house, Loomis sees the children and heads inside. Laurie sits for a few seconds as Michael sits up behind her and begins to choke her. During the struggle, Laurie is able to remove Michael's mask, giving Loomis enough time to appear with his gun drawn and fires 6 times. This causes Michael to fall back over the balcony. Laurie asks Loomis if that was the Boogeyman, to which Loomis confirms. Loomis goes to check on Michael and finds him gone. Laurie sobs as Loomis stares off into the night. To everyone's surprise upon release, Halloween became the most profitable independent film, grossing over $70 million. In 1981, we would receive the first sequel, Halloween 2, which would continue and add to the mythos, after which, when director John Carpenter was done, he produced an anthology sequel, Halloween 3: Season of the Witch. The failure of the third installment meant that the series wouldn't continue until 1988, with Halloween 4: The Return of Michael Myers, a continuation from the second film. Again seeing success, producers quickly continued the series with Halloween 5: The Revenge of Michael Myers. Though seen as lower quality, another sequel was greenlit, but suffered in development hell. Finally, the 6th installment, Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers, was released in 1995. Here we come to our first reset of the timeline. 1998 was 20 years after the original, and horror had changed since the previous installment. So Halloween H2O, 20 years later, ignored the previous sequels and continues from Halloween 2. A bigger success than the films before, Halloween Resurrection was produced and released in 2002. In the years after, slashers were getting rebooted, so in 2007 we got a remake with Halloween from director Rob Zombie. And with that being a hit and not wanting the studio to interfere with a sequel, Zombie made Halloween 2 in 2009, which was a nail in the coffin for the series. Then we come to 2016. The rights are now in the hands of a new production company, and the timeline shifts again. If this is the first episode you're starting with and want to know more about the 9 installments between the original film and the latest trilogy, please check out our 4 other episodes spanning from the original to the remake and its sequel. I will not be going into those films, as this trilogy is a direct sequel to the first film. So let's take a journey down the development of David Gordon Green's Halloween trilogy. In 2009, just after the release of Halloween 2 from Rob Zombie, the Weinstein Company announced a sequel entitled Halloween 3D, and it would be released in the summer of 2010. Zombie had stated that he was done with the series, so Patrick Lussier and Todd Farmer were hired as the film's director and writer. Picking up right at the end of its 2009 predecessor, the film would pay homage to the original version of Michael Myers from the 1978 film. Laurie Strode would be committed to a psychiatric hospital after murdering Dr. Loomis. Sheriff Brackett and Michael would track her down there a year later. Tyler Mane would have reprised his role as Michael Myers from the first 2 films, and Tom Atkins would have been cast as a psychiatrist. But Scott Taylor Compton did not plan on returning as Laurie Strode. After disagreements over the budget and the fact that the film was being made too quickly, Bob Weinstein delayed pre-production until after Lussier and Farmer finished their work on Drive Angry. Development on Halloween 3D resumed with the planned release date of October 26, 2012, but was delayed again when Lussier, Farmer, and Weinstein decided to prioritize a Hellraiser reboot. Siren screenwriters Ben Collins and Luke Piotrowski pitched in 2012 their take on a reboot, simply entitled Halloween. Then in 2013, Josh Stolberg, who was set to revise the 2004 draft for Halloween Asylum, previously written by Mirror's 2 scribe Matt Veen. According to Stolberg, the script was a direct continuation of Halloween Resurrection and featured Myers breaking free from death row. Development of Halloween 3D was revived for one final time in 2014, with Taylor Compton agreeing to appear in the film. Due to the profitability of the Paranormal Activity series in the 2010s, Weinstein insisted on making Halloween 3D a found footage film. And Farmer pitched a mockumentary about a series of murders by a deranged fan taking place during the making of an in-universe film based on Lussier and Farmer's original script. According to Farmer and Taylor Compton, none of the cast and crew involved liked the concept, and the film was ultimately scrapped. February 2015, Malika Cod and Matt Stein started production on a new Halloween film to be written by Patrick Melton and Marcus Dunstan, with Dunstan directing. Cod and Stein described the film as a recalibration rather than a reboot, another Halloween sequel. Tentatively titled Halloween Returns, with Dunstan directing. It would have been a standalone film set to reintroduce the audiences to Michael Myers years after his initial rampage from Halloween and 1981's Halloween 2. Set in 1988, the film would have been about Michael Myers on death row, escaping his execution during a power surge, and going on a rampage in the town of Russellville, Illinois. Malika Cod would reveal in October of 2015 that the project was postponed, citing issues with studios and different variables, and that the extra time would result in a better film. Cod later revealed that the production had stalled because the studio insisted on shooting the film in Serbia, which he believed would be a poor fit for Haddonfield. Finally, in December 2015, Dimension Films announced they no longer held the rights to Halloween after Halloween Returns failed to go into production on schedule This confirmed that the film's cancellation and rights reverting to Miramax. May 2016, Miramax announced that they were co-financing a new Halloween movie along with Blumhouse Productions, with Universal Pictures distributing through the studio's output deal with Blumhouse. CEO Jason Blum stated that the original was a milestone and that had influenced the company to begin making horror films. Miramax and Akkad sought out Blum because of his success as a horror film producer. Mike Flanagan was asked to direct the film, but he would ultimately pass on the offer and likened his pitch to his own film, Hush. The producers would get John Carpenter, who had directed and co-written the first two Halloween films with Deborah Hill, to sign on as an executive producer. Carpenter described his intention as, quote, 38 years after the original Halloween, I'm going to help to try and make the 10th sequel the scariest of them all. He discussed his reasoning for revisiting the series for the first time since producing 1982's Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, in an interview with Rotten Tomatoes. I talked about the Halloweens for a long time, the sequels. I haven't even seen all of them. But finally it occurred to me, well, if I'm just flapping my gums here, why don't I just try and make it as good as I can? So, stop throwing rocks from the sidelines and get in there, try to do something positive. Screenwriting duties were announced in February 2017. David Gordon Green and Danny McBride would be taking writing duties, with their colleague Jeff Fradley co-writing, Green directing, Carpenter advising the project. Carpenter said that he was impressed with the pitch presented by the co-writers, proclaiming that they get it. Rather than reboot the series again, Green and McBride chose to focus on continuing the mythology of the first two films. Danny McBride stated, "We all came together on the decision that remaking everything that already works isn't a good idea, so we just have a reimagining instead." The story would eventually be fleshed out, and eventually all the sequels were ignored from the new film's continuity, with the ending of the first film retcon, kind of like an alternate reality. McBride said that the film still pays tribute to the other follow-ups, despite sharing no direct continuity, stating, there's so many different versions, and the timeline is so mixed up, we just thought it'd be easier to go back to the source and continue from there. It was nicer than knowing you're working on Halloween 11. It just seemed cooler we're making Halloween 2. For fans, we pay homage and respect to every Halloween that has been out there. Green and McBride distanced Halloween from the comedy genre they are known for, with McBride further elaborating that, I think there was maybe one joke on the page, but the rest is straight horror. No major steps were taken without Carpenter's approval, including the acceptance of the initial pitch and bringing back actress Jamie Lee Curtis. Displeased with zombies' reimagining and added backstory, Carpenter wanted to take the character back to his more mysterious roots. Michael Myers as a force of nature and almost supernatural. McBride described the character, I think we're just trying to take it back to what was so good about the original. It was just very simple and just achieved that level of horror that wasn't turning Michael Myers into something that he couldn't be killed. I wanted to be scared by something that I really think could happen. I think it's much more horrifying to be scared by someone standing in the shadows while you're taking out the trash out. Ultimately, the writing team wrote 80 drafts of the script over the span of 8 months, 10 a month. They were rewriting the script up until the last week of filming. Now that we've seen the journey to make this film, let's jump right into Halloween.
Testing 1, 2, 3. We're on.
We're here to investigate a patient that killed 3 innocent teenagers on a Halloween in 1978. He was shot by his own psychiatrist and taken into custody that night, and has spent the last 40 years in captivity. Hello, Michael. I have something you might like to see.
Everyone in my family, turns into a nutcase this time of year. Yeah, I mean, your grandmother is Laurie Strode. She was almost murdered.
Wasn't it her brother who murdered all those babysitters?
No, it was not her brother. That's something that people made up.
Do you know that I pray every night that he would escape?
What the hell did you do that for?
So I can kill him.
Dad, look out!
The bus crashed.
Mom, what bus crashed?
Michael escaped.
Excuse me, somebody's in here.
Hello?
He's waited for this night. He's waited for me. I've waited for him. Get out of the room! Get inside! You don't believe in the Boogeyman? He's here! Michael! You should.
Can you close the closet door?
On October 29th, 2018, two true crime podcasters, Aaron Corey and Dana Haynes, played by Jefferson Hall and Ryan Reeves, visit infamous serial killer Michael Myers, who has been institutionalized at Smiths Grove Psychiatric Hospital for 40 years following his killing spree in Haddonfield. Michael, played by James Jude Courtney, is being prepared for transfer to a maximum security prison. The pair meet Dr. Ranbir Sartain, played by Haluk Bilgener, Michael psychiatrist and former student of Dr. Samuel Loomis, and he leads them to Michael. During their encounter, Aaron displays the mask that Michael wore in 1978 to him, to no effect. In Haddonfield, Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis reprises her role from the original, the only survivor of Michael's killing spree, still lives in fear of him. She drinks heavily and rarely leaves her heavily fortified house. She has a strained relationship with her daughter, Karen, played by Judy Greer, whom the state took away from her when Karen was 12. Allison, Laurie's granddaughter, played by Andy Matichak, does try to maintain a relationship with her grandmother. As Michael is being transferred on the night of October 30th, the bus crashes and patients begin to wander into the road. As the father and son are driving down the same road, they stop to see what is happening. The father is checking the bus, and Michael murders them both, takes their truck, and returns to Haddonfield. On October 31st, Michael follows Aaron and Dana to the grave of his sister Judith. He follows them to a gas station. Aaron and a mechanic are killed by Michael, who takes the mechanic's coveralls. Dana goes into the restroom as Michael follows her inside and kills her as well. Michael recovers his mask from Aaron's car. Deputy Frank Hawkins, played by Will Patton, who arrested Michael in 1978, tries to convince Sheriff Barker, played by Omar Dorsey, that Michael is dangerous after learning that he has escaped. Allison and her parents have dinner with her boyfriend, Cameron, played by Dylan Arnold. Laurie shows up. Allison says that she invited Laurie. Laurie tries to reconcile and attempts to warn Karen, but Karen dismisses her concerns, urging Laurie to move on with her life. Later that night, while at a costume party, Allison finds Cameron cheating on her and leaves with his friend, Oscar, played by Drew Scheid. Meanwhile, while babysitting a boy named Julian, Allison's best friend, Vicky, played by Virginia Gardner, and her boyfriend, Dave, played by Miles Robbins, are killed by Michael. Deputy Hawkins and Laurie overhear the incident on the radio and head to the house. Laurie sees Michael for the first time in 40 years and shoots him in the shoulder before he flees. The police take Laurie, Karen, and her husband Ray, played by Toby Huss, to Laurie's home for protection. Hawkins sets a squad car outside the residence and promises to find Allison and bring her to be with the family. Dr. Sartain persuades Sheriff Barker to allow him to help in the hunt for Michael. Meanwhile, as Alice and Oscar walk home from the party, Oscar misreads the situation between Allison and Cameron and kisses Allison. She rejects him and leaves him alone. Michael ends up killing Oscar, but Hawkins and Sartain arrive just in time to rescue Allison. Deputy Hawkins drives his truck into Michael, wanting to finish him off. Hawkins tries to kill Michael, but Dr. Sartain, who has become obsessed with Michael's enigmatic motivations, attacks and leaves Hawkins for dead. It is revealed that he orchestrated Michael's escape to study him in the wild. Dr. Sartain then heads towards Laurie's home with an unconscious Michael and Allison locked in the backseat together. Michael wakes up and kills Sartain while Allison flees from the scene. Michael then ambushes and kills 2 police officers that are outside Laurie's home. When Ray goes outside to greet who he believes are the 2 officers, Michael strangles him to death. Laurie manages to get Karen to safety before she engages in a showdown with Michael. Laurie severely injures Michael by blowing off a couple of his fingers. Michael stabs her in the abdomen and pushes her over a balcony. When Michael goes to check Laurie's body, he finds it missing, reminiscent of their first encounter. Laurie pretends to break down in tears and calls out for her mother, luring Michael and allowing her to shoot him in the jaw. Laurie suddenly reappears and attacks Michael, trapping him inside the safe room with Karen and Allison's help. The trio sets the house ablaze, and Laurie says goodbye to Michael before she begins to faint and lets her daughter and granddaughter quickly hitchhike a passerby vehicle to take her to the hospital. A final shot of the burning basement is shown, and Michael, nowhere in sight, only breathing is heard, indicating that he has survived. The role of Allison became somewhat of a coveted role. Multiple popular actresses, including Lucy Hale and Emma Roberts, met with Danny McBride to personally talk about the movie. However, the studio decided they wanted to go back to the roots of the first film and cast an unknown actress, similar to how Jamie Lee Curtis was cast in the original. And I understand where they're coming from. They wanted somebody new, fresh. But then again, like, Jamie Lee Curtis is kind of like a legacy, or not like a Nepo baby, essentially, right? And like that's kind of what Emma Roberts was. I could totally see her coming in and playing a role, not necessarily this role, but like playing a role similar, like just because she is also a Nepo baby too. But I get where they're coming from though, like wanting someone more unknown. And yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis was unknown, but like her mom and her dad were famous before she was. But then again, like coming out and like, yeah, she used her dad's name, but she put like Jamie Lee Curtis. So most people, I guess, wouldn't know that and wouldn't really know that unless you like looked into it a little bit further. I mean, more so like older people probably would, but then like younger people would just be like, oh, she's Jamie Lee Curtis. I mean, now more. I mean, people know her, right? So they know of her background and of her mom and her dad. But I get where they're going, where they were trying to get like with the casting. Early on, the script for the film had Laurie's daughter, Jamie Lloyd from the original continuities, Halloween 4 and 5, appear alongside Laurie for the first time. However, subsequent rewrites changed her to Karen. Even before those early plans were publicly known, Danielle Harris, who played Jamie, objected, feeling strongly about Laurie having a daughter that was not Jamie. But her appeals to the production company were dismissed. And it's a little sad because Danielle Harris has been championing this just as long, I mean, not just as long as Jamie Lee Curtis, but just about as long as she has. I mean, the fact that she's played this part for 2 films, then even came back for the remake. I mean, Jamie came back for H2O anyways, too, so, I mean, I don't know. I wish they would have at least brought her in for something, maybe playing her granddaughter or something. I don't know. It would just have been nice to see her in a role just somewhere, something along the lines, maybe or even like maybe her older sister or something. You could just kind of reference it, maybe. I don't know, but I think they should have included her somewhere along the line of this. When Allison walks down the street with her friends, Dave claims to have heard that Laurie Strode was Michael Myers' younger sister. However, Vicky says that this was made up by other people to make themselves feel better. This is a clear jab at Halloween 2, where Laurie was famously revealed to be Michael's baby sister, a fact that even she was unaware of. Writer John Carpenter later admitted that he wrote the script for Halloween 2 primarily for the money, and had included the family relation between Laurie and Michael simply as a plot device, something which he later regretted. Because this film ignores Halloween 2, the record is changed yet again. And honestly, that's a clever way to bring up that fact that hey, what happened about that plot point from the second one? That was made up the whole reason why we had the second one, the fourth, fifth, sixth, the seventh, the eighth, literally even the remakes, included that as a plot point. And I'm glad that, John Carpenter was like, I don't like that I did that. I think that's kind of stupid that I decided to, just for the money and just to, in order to, and he was kind of strong-armed into it to be like, we want a sequel in order to get you more projects. You got to give us a sequel, you get more projects. Something you actually want to work on. So he had to sit there and come up with some reason why Michael is chasing Laurie, and he decided, well, I don't know, his sister? And and then they read that and they were like, yeah, I guess that works. And it's kind of like the catalyst of the series going forward. And I'm glad that they kind of wiped it away, because it is kind of, when you think about it, it is a little like, what? Huh? In the scene where Allison is in class, she's sitting in the far right corner, exactly where her grandmother Laurie was sitting in Halloween. In both scenes, the lesson is on Frankel's fate. The teacher is played by P.J. Souls, who played Linda in the 1987 film. And Laurie is seen standing across the road through the classroom blinds, practically identical to the 1978 original, when Laurie looks out the window and sees Michael. This is one of multiple reversals of scenes from the original movie. We see her fall off the balcony and disappear. I like that they decided to mirror a couple of the scenes from the first one to kind of call back to it. And I love that they brought in P.J. Souls for this. I mean, yeah, it's just a speaking role. You don't actually get to see her. It would be weird to see her because it'd be like, well, she died in the first one. But you know what I mean? I'm glad that they brought her back, because I like when they acknowledge these people who they made parts of the original. She was in it. Yeah, maybe it's a little silly when she dies, but she's part of this too. It's part of her. She's part of the legacy. So bringing her back in some way is amazing. A previous version of the script's final moments surfaced, however, featuring a different conclusion. While trying to protect her granddaughter, Laurie and Michael fought again in one last confrontation that left her mortally wounded after the masked killer stabbed her in the chest and twisted his knife. Laurie's daughter then shot Michael with the crossbow, and he fell among Laurie's training mannequins before taking what appeared to be one last labored breath. While the symbolism of Michael succumbing to his wounds among the evidence of Laurie's decades of training may have been compelling, it's the fact Laurie died too that would have undermined the story, especially kind of in a kind of shitty way. She just gets stabbed and then twisted, and then he just kind of dies with a crossbow. It's kind of dumb. That would have been a not a fitting way to end, especially if you were we're gonna use this as just the ending. That's not a good way to go out. It's not that wouldn't have been earned. If it was the end to the third one and we had seen all this other stuff, yeah, I guess that would have been maybe a better ending. But as a sequel to the first Halloween, and having them see each other for the first time in 40 years, that's how he goes out, that's how she goes out. No, they needed a little bit more, and I'm glad that we got that, and we got more than just the one story. Halloween grossed $159.3 million in the U.S. and Canada, with a total worldwide gross of $259.9 million. The film was met with generally favorable to some mixed reviews, with an overall consensus of a bumpy ride but lands as a worthy sequel to the original. Critics at Rotten Tomatoes stated Halloween largely wipes the slate clean after decades of disappointing sequels, ignoring increasingly elaborate mythology in favor of basic, yet still effective ingredients. In September of 2018, Blum said that, "We will do a sequel if the movie performs." And after the film's opening weekend, McBride confirmed that early development on a sequel had begun. Prior to the release of Halloween in 2018, McBride confirmed that he and Green had originally intended to pitch 2 films that would be shot back-to-back, but decided against it. Holding out to see the reaction to the first film, he said, "We were going to shoot 2 of them back-to-back. Then we were like, well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. This could come out and everyone could hate us and we'd never work again. So let's not have to sit around for a year like we wait for another movie to come out that we know people aren't going to like. So we were like, let's learn from this and see what works and what doesn't. But we definitely have an idea of where we would go with this branch of the story, and hopefully we get a chance to do that." February 2019, Collider exclusively confirmed Scott Teems was brought on to write the script, having collaborated with Blumhouse Productions on several projects in development. Blum, Malika Cott, and Bill Block returned as producers, with Jamie Lee Curtis, Judy Greer, and Andy Matichak reprising their roles. Later in June 2019, it was reported that a sequel would begin filming in September 2019, with Green returning to write the script and direct. And on July 8th, 2019, Bloody Disgusting reported that the studio was not only considering filming 2 sequels back-to-back, but also releasing both of them in October 2020. On July 19th, 2019, Universal Pictures revealed the titles and release dates of the 2 sequels. Halloween Kills to be released on October 16th, 2020, and Halloween Ends to be released on October 15th, 2021. Halloween Kills was originally set to be theatrically released on October 16th, 2020, but at the beginning of 2020, the world stopped. For the first time in over 100 years, we experienced a global pandemic due to COVID-19. All theatrical releases going forward were put on hold, put onto streaming sites, or canceled. Halloween Kills was one of the many films affected by the pandemic, and in July 2020, the film was delayed to October 15, 2021. Halloween Kills premiered at the 78th Venice International Film Festival on September 8, 2021. And on September 9, 2021, it was announced that in addition to being released in theaters, the film would also be streamed on paid tiers of Peacock for 60 days. Now let's see if evil truly dies tonight.
My grandmother was right. The Boogeyman was real.
It's over.
We can't hurt anyone ever again.
No one told you.
Told me what?
Somebody in there?
Michael Myers is alive.
Stop! You had a knife in your stomach.
You and Allison should not have to keep running. Evil dies tonight.
I'm not just gonna sit and watch another innocent person die.
If you track Michael's victims,
cuts a straight line to Michael's childhood home.
What do? We fight.
Let's hunt him down.
Michael Myers is flesh and blood. But a man couldn't have survived that fire. The more he kills, the more he transcends.
Run! Go now!
He's the essence of evil.
Do it! Do it! You want your mask? Come and get it!
I'm coming for you, Michael.
Starting back on October 31st, 1978, Deputy Frank Hawkins, this younger version of Hawkins is played by Thomas Mann, and his partner track Michael Myers to his old house. They investigate, and Michael takes a hold of Hawkins' partner, and they struggle. Hawkins takes out his gun and accidentally shoots his partner dead while trying to save him. Michael leaves the house, but stops just outside as he is surrounded by police, and Hawkins prevents Dr. Samuel Loomis from executing Michael. 40 years later, continue on October 31st, 2018, Cameron, still played by Dylan Arnold, finds Deputy Hawkins stabbed and left to die by Dr. Sartain. Cameron calls an ambulance, and Hawkins regrets allowing Michael to live and vows to kill him. Meanwhile, Tommy Doyle, played by Anthony Michael Hall, along with fellow survivors Marion Chambers, Lindsay Wallace, and Cameron's father, Lonnie Elam. They are played by Nancy Stevens, Kyle Richards, and Robert Longstreet, respectively. They celebrate the 40th anniversary of Michael's imprisonment, each of them having survived an encounter with Michael in 1978. Firefighters responding to Laurie Strode's burning house encounter Michael, still portrayed by James Jude Courtney, who slaughters them with their own equipment as Laurie, her daughter Karen, and her granddaughter Allison are taken to Haddonfield Memorial Hospital in the back of a truck, where Laurie undergoes emergency surgery. The three women are continued to be portrayed by Jamie Lee Curtis, Judy Greer, and Annie Manichak, respectively. Michael attacks Laurie's neighbors, first killing the husband by stabbing him to death, then impaling the wife's throat with a fluorescent light tube. He then starts walking back to Haddonfield. Tommy, Marion, Lindsay, and Lonnie learn of Michael's killing spree through an emergency alert. A bar patron comes back inside the bar, saying that she supposedly saw Michael breaking into her car. They go outside and discover the thief has crashed the car and escapes unnoticed. Tommy forms a mob of Haddonfield residents to hunt down Michael. Karen is informed that Michael is still alive, but withholds the information from Laurie to allow her to recover. Allison reconciles with Cameron and joins Tommy's mom to avenge her father's death. Laurie awakens to find Hawkins in the same room. He wakes up and they begin to reminisce about their former relationship. Marion, Lindsay, Vanessa, and her husband Marcus drive around the community, warning everyone to stay inside. Michael appears and kills them one by one. Lindsay escapes and is found alive by Tommy, Lonnie, Allison, and Cameron. The group deduces that Michael is heading towards his childhood home. Tommy takes Lindsay to the hospital and reunites with former Haddonfield Sheriff Lee Brackett, played again by Charles Cyphers, whose daughter Annie was killed during Michael's first massacre. They visit with Laurie and inform her Michael has survived. Laurie prepares to leave the hospital. Across town, a couple of kids annoy Big John and Little John, the current owners of the Myers house. They are played by Scott MacArthur and Michael McDonald, respectively. They scare off the kids and are killed by Michael, who has snuck into the house. The fugitive convict who had tried to steal Vanessa's car arrives at the hospital and is mistaken for Michael. Tommy's mom pursues him through the hospital before Karen realizes that he is not Michael. She tries to calm the mom and help the mental patient, but he jumps out of a window to his death. Laurie urges Karen to work with Tommy and Brackett to hunt Michael down. Lonnie, Cameron, and Allison arrive at the Myers house. Lonnie tells the teens to wait outside as he enters the house alone and is killed. Allison and Cameron rush inside and find his corpse before being attacked by Michael, who murders Cameron. Michael prepares to kill Allison, but is stabbed in the back with a pitchfork by Karen. She steals his mask and taunts him to follow her. She leads Michael to Tommy's mob, who swarm, attack, and seemingly kill him. When the mob disperses, Michael gets back up and massacres the entire mob, including Tommy and Brackett. Back at the Myers house, Karen sees a vision of a young Michael in Judith Myers' old bedroom and goes upstairs to investigate while Allison receives medical attention. Michael appears and stabs Karen to death as Laurie stares out of her hospital room. Alright, so now let's get into some trivia for Halloween Kills. Jamie Lee Curtis, Charles Cyphers, Kyle Richards, Nancy Stevens, and Nick Castle were all in the original Halloween, and all returned for the sequel. The characters of Tommy Doyle and Lonnie Elam from the original also returned, but were recast with Anthony Michael Hall and Robert Longstreet. Because Brian Andrews had retired from acting since 2015, and Brent LePage never acted again after the original Halloween. It is good to see these people come back. I love when legacy characters come back. I really wish that, they would have been able to get at least maybe the original ones. We're going to talk about later about maybe another person coming back as one of the roles. And I'm glad, like in the previous film, they had PJ Souls come back for like a small role. It was just a voice role, but I'm just glad that they saw these guys and they're still around. Kyle Richards has been around for all this time. She was on Real Housewives of I forgot which one, and then Nancy Stevens has been coming back for Halloween since the second one, honestly, because the original second one, because she was in the first, second, and then she was in Halloween H2O, and then now she was back for this one. And Nick Castle's been, I think, coming back too for a couple of them as well. So like Jamie Lee Curtis too. I just wish that they would have brought some other people back. Maybe like I had said previously with like Danielle Harris. That would have been cool to just like give her just a small part for something. If you're not going to go with her being her daughter, it would have just been interesting to see her in the Halloween franchise still. Though the filmmakers made a new mask for the 2018 film that looked similar to the original mask, but with weathering to show it had aged, they did recreate the original William Shatner mask for the opening sequence of this film, which takes place immediately after the events of the first film. And I have watched like tutorials on YouTube on how to, like, people recreating the mask. It actually really isn't that difficult. Like I'm glad that they did it, because the guy who did it originally, he showed like it's not too difficult to do yourself. All you have to do is you got to find that William Shatner mask, which you can order online. I think you remove the eyebrows or something, or you shave them down. I know you remove the sideburns. You like darken the hair or something, and then you widen the eye holes, and then you just spray paint the white, and it pretty much is like that's pretty much all it takes to recreate it. But I'm glad that they decided to just recreate it instead of try to do like CGI or buy a mask like they did, or like try to buy like a knockoff version of the mask or something. Or they decided, let's just recreate the mask, and it'll look as close. It'll actually look just as close to the original one as any of the other ones have. This is the only Halloween film featuring Laurie Strode in which she shares no scenes with Michael Myers. Jamie Lee Curtis reprises her role as Laurie Strode for a sixth time, and in doing so, she surpasses Donald Pleasance, who appeared in 5 movies, with the most appearances in the series. And I think it's a great thing. I mean, not a great thing, because obviously Donald Pleasance passed away before he was able to come back for reshoots for the 6th film, The Curse of Michael Myers, and even that he wasn't even able to say yes or no to coming back for the H2O. But I mean, I think it's a great honor for her to surpass Donald Pleasance, especially because it's like she was part of the original just like he was, and she decided to stick with it just like he did. Like he kept coming back because he was like, they're gonna get someone else. I might as well come back and at least, you know, give a good performance. And he does in every movie, even like the fifth film, which is not that good. He still gives a great performance. And I'm glad that it wasn't someone else that surpassed him. It was Jamie Lee Curtis, at least, and that she stuck around with it too, just like he did. And I'm glad. David Gordon Green recalled that when they attempted to find a yearbook photo of one of Michael's victims from 1978, he came across a yearbook photo of Bob Odenkirk that he thought resembled the original actor John Michael Graham. The rights issues were resolved so that Green could use Odenkirk's photo instead of the actual actor. Odenkirk is therefore credited as Bob, despite not physically appearing in the film. And I think that's pretty funny that, yeah, like if you could go back and look at someone's photo and be like, you look like this dude. Like that, back then, you look like exactly like that guy. We're going to use your photo. We're going to get like everything resolved so we can use it. And I love that, yeah, because I think I looked at the credits when the movie had ended, and I saw Bob Odenkirk's name on there, and I was like, wait, who was he? He played Bob? What? That doesn't make any sense. And then now this just puts like all the puzzle pieces together, and I'm like, oh, okay, that right there, that makes more sense than than anything, I guess. Like it still kind of was like a weird little piece of information, but pretty funny. Paul Rudd, who played Tommy Doyle in Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers, was approached to reprise his role, but declined as he was unavailable due to his commitments to Ghostbusters Afterlife. Now, I don't want to hate on Ghostbusters Afterlife because it wasn't a terrible movie. I feel like they did rehash a lot of they kind of pulled like a Halloween or a Force Awakens, where they kind of redid like the first one, but like with new characters, a new setting, whatever, like a requel kind of thing. And it was not terrible. Like Paul Rudd's great in it, like always. And I think, though, I wish he would have been available. It would have been so awesome to have that connection of Paul Rudd coming in to play Tommy Doyle again. And I love that that was like his and introducing Paul Rudd in Halloween. And I know his actual first theatrical movie that was released was Clueless. It just so happened because like obviously Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers was going through such like developmental problems and production and all that, so it got delayed further back behind Clueless. So Clueless actually came out first, but this movie was his like introducing, and it would have just been so cool. But I mean, Anthony Michael Hall does a good job, like always. He does a great job. But I think it would have been so cool to see Paul Rudd come back and play this like awesome, weird, different version of Tommy Doyle, and it would have just been like such a great thing to see. Halloween Kills grossed $92 million in the U.S. and Canada, with a worldwide gross of $133.4 million. It made far less than the previous installment, and although the lower earnings could be attributed to the pandemic, with the film also being available on streaming, the film was met with mixed or average reviews. The Rotten Tomatoes critical consensus reads, Halloween Kills should satisfy fans in search of brutal slasher thrills, but in terms of advancing the franchise, it's a bit less than the sum of its bloody parts. Barry Hertz of the Globe and Mail gave a positive review, saying that the film was brimming with odd decisions, but added, there is something entertaining or maybe just enjoyably puzzling about what Gordon Green and McBride think a Michael Myers movie could or ought to be. Richard Roper of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film a score of 2 out of 4 stars, describing it as a thudding disappointment and a consistent, sloppy mess. So even though the pandemic was still going on, Green and McBride still had another installment up their sleeves, ready to end the franchise. As we saw before, in July 2019, Green was announced to direct both sequels to Halloween. Along with Green and McBride, Paul Brad Logan and Chris Bernier were announced as co-writers. On the producing side, we have Blum, Malika Todd, and Bill Block, while Carpenter, Curtis, Green, and McBride were attached as executive producers once again. The writing team started workshopping ideas before production of Halloween Kills commenced, completing a first draft in 2019. The final script was completed in 2021, pending Carpenter's approval. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Universal delayed the release dates of both Kills and Ends by a year. Green wanted to craft each sequel differently. With the second film, he wanted an action film, and for the finale, a love story, in part to subvert viewers' expectations. He wanted to further explore what can transform someone into a psychopath through Corey Cunningham's character. Corey was conceived in order to explore how Michael Myers and Laurie Strode affected the town of Haddonfield and had become infected with evil perceived by the townsfolk. With a character arc and an intimate coming-of-age story similar to that of Arnie Cunningham from John Carpenter's Christine, Corey was created to mimic how neglected community members can unexpectedly turn evil. The role was also inspired by real-life perpetrators of school shootings, wanting Corey's kills to emulate Michael's violent acts but be somewhat messy, with his kills not killing people well like Myers does. Green cited influences from other films such as Willard, Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker, My Bodyguard, Blood Rage, Bad Taste, and Fallen Angels. Carpenter gave Green and McBride his approval for Corey, congratulating them of not rehashing the same plotline in every film, which Carpenter himself struggled to do while writing Halloween 2. In October 2021, Green revealed that Halloween Ends will take place 4 years after the events of Halloween Kills and would incorporate elements of the pandemic into the story. Curtis claimed that the film would be shocking and will make people very angry. Akkad stated Ends will be more contained than Kills. According to Green, several different endings were considered for the film. Ultimately, a more satisfactory, optimistic, hopeful conclusion was chosen after Kills' bleak ending, compensating for the traumatic events that Laurie Strode lived through in the film and its predecessors. The first planned, darker ending had Laurie Strode committing suicide at the end of the film, but according to Green, the moment in which Laurie put a gun to her mouth was the one where he, Brad Logan, Bernier, and McBride had to make the decision and start coming up with different choose-your-own-adventure type alternatives. Another darker ending the writers considered having had Corey Cunningham not only surviving the film's events and getting away with his murders, but also convincing Allison to join him, and the two running off to hit the road in a natural-born killers style ending. Other versions had Corey realizing the error of his ways and stepping back after getting his toes stuck in some water, or Corey becoming Michael Myers' successor in case the filmmakers wish to keep making more Halloween films after Green's departure from the series. From all the endings they tested and scenes they removed for the film's finale, McBride felt that the one ultimately used was the most anticipated. Green's test screen ends to see if it engaged audiences or not. After several test screenings, the original final confrontation between Laurie Strode and Michael Myers, as well as the ending sequence, were discarded. And in June 2022, 2 weeks of reshoots were scheduled in Savannah, although they only lasted 4 days and were completed that same month. It was decided that the film's conclusion should be more modest and intimate, as opposed to a brawl like the super noisy and aggressive ending of Kills, with Green wishing to return the series to its simple, dramatic roots. And now, let's see how Green ends Halloween. following night, 2019, 21-year-old Corey Cunningham, played by Rohan Campbell, babysits a young boy named Jeremy. As the night progresses, Jeremy pulls a prank on Corey by locking him inside the attic. Corey kicks open the door and accidentally knocks Jeremy over a staircase railing to his death, just as Jeremy's parents come home. Corey is accused of intentionally killing Jeremy, but is cleared of manslaughter. 3 years later, Michael has vanished and the town of Haddonfield is still reeling from the aftermath of Michael Myers' latest massacre. Laurie Strode, still played by Jamie Lee Curtis, is writing a memoir. Allison, also continuing to be played by Andy Matichak, is now a nurse and now lives with Laurie in a new home. During this time, Corey has been working at his stepfather's salvage yard. On his way home, he is teased about the past murder by high school bullies and ends up injuring himself. Laurie sees this altercation and brings him to the doctor's office where Allison works. Allison and Corey start to develop a relationship and later attend a Halloween party, where Corey is confronted by Jeremy's mother. Allison defends him, which causes them to have an argument. Corey leaves the party and runs into the bullies. They start to accost him and throw him off a bridge. He is dragged into the sewers and choked by Michael, who eventually lets him go. Michael is still played by James Jude Courtney. Corey crawls out and is threatened by a homeless man. In a struggle, Corey stabs the man to death and flees. After Corey and Allison make amends, the two go on a dinner date. They are interrupted by Allison's ex-boyfriend, police officer Doug Mullaney, who harasses them both. Later, Corey lures Doug into the sewer, where Michael emerges in a weakened state and kills Doug to Corey's delight. Allison is passed over for her promotion at work in favor of a nurse who is having an affair with the doctor. Later that night, Corey kills the doctor at his home while Michael kills the nurse. An unknowing Allison plans to leave Haddonfield with an insistent Corey because of the past trauma, while Laurie becomes increasingly suspicious of Corey. Speaking to Jeremy's father, Laurie realizes Corey is infected by Michael's evil. On October 31st, Laurie finds Corey sleeping in the spot where Jeremy died, and offers to help him on the condition that he distance himself from Allison. Corey retorts by blaming her for the events that have occurred in Haddonfield and says if he cannot have Allison, no one will. Corey returns to the sewers and successfully fights a still weak Michael for his mask. Meanwhile, Laurie and Allison argue as she plans to leave, and Allison too blames Laurie for Michael's actions. That night, a masked Corey embarks on a rampage, murdering the bullies after luring them to the salvage yard. One of them accidentally kills Corey's stepfather. He goes on to kill his mother and a DJ at a local radio station who had taunted him earlier. At the Strode house, Laurie fakes a suicide attempt to lure Corey to her, whom she shoots down the stairs. Corey then stabs himself in the neck to frame Laurie for his death in front of the arriving Allison, who leaves in distress. Michael suddenly arrives, retrieves his mask, and kills Corey. A fight ensues in Laurie's kitchen, and Laurie manages to pin Michael to the kitchen table and slit his throat. After a struggle, Allison is convinced of the truth behind Corey's death after receiving a call from Deputy Frank Hawkins. She returns to help subdue and finally kill Michael by slicing his wrists. Laurie and Allison take Michael's body to the salvage yard by police escort, attracting the residents of Haddonfield, who follow them in a procession. The crowd, altogether, throws Michael's body into the industrial shredder. In the ensuing days, Allison and Laurie reconcile, and Allison leaves Haddonfield while Laurie finishes her memoir and rediscovers her romance with Hawkins. Okay, so let's get into our last bits of trivia for the Halloween franchise. In keeping tradition with Halloween and Halloween Kills, using the opening title fonts of Halloween and Halloween 2, respectively, Halloween Ends uses the blue font titles from Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which, and we'll get into it a little bit later, especially in my final thoughts. I love that this one decided to, you know what, kind of similar what the third Halloween did. Like, it gave you a story that wasn't really about Michael Myers. And I mean, that the original Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is not about Michael Myers at all. But this one is, we're taking a step back. We're talking about something a little bit different. We're centered on a different person too, and I like that. I like that we got to see something different. It wasn't just the same old rehash, and I think that's what John Carpenter saw too when they gave him the script, and I think that's what makes this one stand out more. And you may not like it, but I think it gives it a charm and will help it endure for later. Reportedly, the Corey surviving ending that had it so that Corey did not attempt suicide, only to be killed by Michael. Instead, following Laurie and Michael's battle, he has a confrontation with Allison, who shoots him and causes him to fall out a window, vanishing when she looks out at it. A direct callback to the ending of the original Halloween film, indicating that Corey is indeed the new Boogeyman. It did not go over well with test audiences, though, and the film was altered accordingly. And I'm kind of glad they didn't go with that. I'm kind of glad that they were, like, David Gordon Green, Danny McBride, John Carpenter, Jamie Lee Curtis, they all wanted this to be the end. This has to be the end, at least for now, for at least a little bit, right? We have to have the end of Halloween. This is Halloween Ends. And so continuing with someone else just means that there's going to be more Halloween films, more and more. Or even just like showing Michael breathe, hearing him breathe, or having his eyes open. I'm glad that they decided to, you know what, this is, we're going with an ending that just decides to be the end. Given this movie's multiple allusions to Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, one proposed ending fittingly takes place at the Silver Shamrock Factory, where the production line starts pumping out Michael Myers masks after Michael dies. Would have been a weird supernatural tie back to the third one, and it would have been, I think it would have been kind of cool to see that happen. It's like a weird symbol thing of like he's still like that. He represents evil, right? And that evil's still around, and look, it's just generating evil, more evil. But I don't think most people have seen the third Halloween. I think they would have been like, what does this mean? It's I don't know. I like the idea of that imagery, but this wouldn't have gone well with people. People would have been like, what? What is this? Why throw in something supernatural now? Because I feel like that's something supernatural. Why are we seeing these masks being made when I feel like, unlike with like Scream, like in their movie universe, like Stab is a movie, so that's why you can say like the mask keeps getting made. This, like, why would you keep making Michael Myers masks, right? And bringing things back to the original Halloween, 1978, in a multi-layered homage, the movie that Corey and Jeremy are watching is 1982's The Thing, which is a remake of The Thing from Another World, which is the movie that Laurie and Tommy are watching in the original Halloween. And of course, The Thing was also directed by John Carpenter. So what I assume, and I take away from this, is that John Carpenter made a movie that I kind of feel like would be like the Stab for Scream. Like, he made a movie based off of this, of the original Halloween, called Halloween. And in that movie, he had The Thing from it, and then he ended up remaking The Thing, and that's the movie that they saw because it has to, because it's John Carpenter's The Thing. And so then John Carpenter exists in this universe as well. Weird to think about, but yeah, I mean, honestly, it makes more sense than sometimes when they, like, when people try to be like, well, this actor was in a movie that they bring up. It's like, yeah, but that's an actor in a movie in that universe. They just so happen to look like with Hot Tub Time Machine. They bring it up in Endgame, and I know Sebastian Stan's in that. And you could just say that Bucky looks like him. Why does it have to be that? That's like he's the actor in it, right? With this, it's the same thing. It's like Jamie Lee Curtis is an actress in this universe where Laurie Strode happens to be a real person. You know what I mean? I just think it's funny. I think it's like weird thinking about all that, but I love when they do that, where they throw something in like this, where your brain has to stop and thinking like, wait, what? But I'm glad that they did it. Like that's a great way to pay respect to the original one. It's just this little thing where they're watching the remake of The Thing that was remade by the guy who directed the original film that this movie is a sequel to. Awesome. Knocks it out of the park. Halloween Ends grossed $64.1 million in the US and Canada, with a worldwide total of $105 million. This is the lowest grossing of the films from this trilogy. Though this was released after a lot of the pandemic restrictions were lifted, the simultaneous release on Peacock more than likely attributed to the low box office. Critics and audiences gave the film mixed to poor reviews, with Richard Roper of the Chicago Sun-Times writing the so-called finale of the Michael Myers saga is just stabbing metaphors, stabbing, soap opera, stabbing, marching band bully, stabbing, and more stabbing. Owen Gleiberman saying, the film is neither scary nor fun. I do believe that this will go down as an underrated film, just as so many films, even in this franchise, have gone on to be remembered and be watched over and over by many fans out there. And I'm going to get into that in the final thoughts, because there's just a lot to say about this film still. But before we move on to those final thoughts, and I get into the ranking of how I would put these according, like, against each other, just the movies themselves, let's get into the kill counter. Kill counter. Now we come to the part of the podcast where we see the number of kills in the films. Let's go over each film and tally everything up. Beginning with Halloween 2018. The first few deaths happen off screen. It starts with a boy named Kevin and his unnamed father pulling up to the overturned bus that was transporting Michael. There is a police officer lying on the ground. Kevin's father goes to investigate, and we later see he has a broken neck. Kevin goes to investigate and finds another dead police officer. He calls out for his father and gets no reply, then proceeds to enter the bus. He is startled by Dr. Sartain and accidentally shoots him. Kevin runs back to the car, attempts to start the engine, but Michael Myers attacks and breaks his neck. Michael tracks the podcasters to a gas station, and he nearly rips the jaw off a gas station clerk. He moves on to a mechanic and beats him to death. Michael then bashes Aaron's head numerous times against the wall and door. He moves on to Dana, who has been using the restroom. He comes up to her stall and pours out a handful of teeth. Dana tries to get away, but Michael breaks her neck. During Michael's walk around Haddonfield, he kills two people. One he kills with a hammer off screen and stabs another through the back of the neck. While Vicky is babysitting Julian, she's stabbed 2 times with a knife, and her boyfriend Dave is pinned to a wall with a knife. Oscar is left by himself after making a move on Allison, and Michael appears and frightens the young man. Michael stabs Oscar in the back and impales him through his chin on the fence post. Deputy Hawkins and Dr. Sartain come across Allison as they drive around. She gets in the back seat, and they find Michael. Hawkins hits Michael with his car, exits to finish him off, but is stopped by Dr. Sartain. The doctor stabs Hawkins and puts Michael in the back seat with Allison. Allison remarks that Michael spoke to her earlier. Sartain asks what Michael said. Allison stalls for time, and finally Michael recovers and kicks through the metal grating, knocking Sartain into the airbag. The cruiser comes to a stop, and Allison flees, with Sartain being knocked to the ground. Michael slams his foot against Sartain's head, killing him. Officer Richards and Francis are stationed outside of Laurie's house. Michael stabs Richards in the head, and later Officer Francis has his head decapitated and made into a jack-o'-lantern. The last death we see is Ray Nelson, who gets garroted by Michael until his neck breaks. That gives 2018's Halloween 17 total deaths. Next we have Halloween Kills. The first death is Officer Pete McCabe, who was accidentally shot by Hawkins in 1978. As Laurie's house is burning, Michael is able to escape thanks to the firefighters opening the trap they put Michael inside of. Firefighter Benton has his skull bashed in with a halogen bar. Another firefighter is yanked under the floor and killed off-screen. And then we have a massacre. Michael uses the halogen bar and a circular saw to kill 9 other firefighters. Michael makes his way into a neighbor's house. Here live Phil and Sandra. Phil runs into Michael in the bathroom and tries to lock him in, but Michael punches his way through the door and kills Phil. Michael takes a fluorescent light bulb and stabs Sandra in the neck, but she survives. The group that is going around to warn the town about Michael stops by a playground, and Lindsay exits the car in order to warn some kids to go home. Michael then appears. He attacks the car, climbing on top and smashing the windows. Marion starts shooting, hoping to hit Michael. The backseat window breaks, so Marcus and Vanessa crawl out to safety. Marion then opens the car door to shoot, but having used all her bullets, is attacked and killed. Marcus tries to attack Michael by strangling him with the stethoscope, but Michael retaliates by stabbing him in the eye with the kitchen knife, killing him. Vanessa takes out her gun and tries to shoot Michael. He kicks the door and Vanessa ends up accidentally shooting herself in the head. Dennis is a kid who, along with his friends, play a trick on Little John and Big John, the couple living in the Myers house. His friends and him head to the playground, and they are told to leave. He's killed off-screen with a knife. The Johns go back inside their house and realize that someone has broken into their house. They split up and begin to search for the intruder. Big John enters a bedroom, and Michael comes up behind him and stabs him in the armpit. He then finishes Big John by gouging out his eyes with his thumbs. Little John enters the room to find his husband's body, and Michael standing at the window. Michael walks towards him and kills him off-screen. The other mental patient who had escaped earlier and tried to take Vanessa's car, he accidentally gets ID'd as Michael Myers at the hospital. A mob forms and chases him through the hospital. Karen tries to help him and tries to stop the mob, but he becomes trapped, so he jumps from the 6th floor to his death. Lonnie, Cameron, and Allison arrive at the Myers house. Lonnie tells the pair to wait in the car. He goes inside and checks the attic and is killed off screen. Cameron and Allison go into the house to help Lonnie. Michael starts to attack and Cameron is killed, banging his head on the banister and breaks his neck. The mob hunting Michael stops hunting Michael outside his former home. Led by Tommy and Brackett, they begin to beat Michael with various weapons. They believe to have him subdued, and they remove his mask, but he is able to get back up. Michael slits the former sheriff's throat and slashes up 5 other townspeople. Tommy watches in shock. He is stabbed and beaten to death with a bat off-screen. Karen takes Michael's mask and lures him back into the house, up into Judith's old room. Here she is cornered and Michael butchers her. Wow, Halloween Kills really lives up to its name with 29 kills. So lastly, we have Halloween Ends. The first death is Jeremy Allen. He has his neck broken after accidentally being knocked off an indoor balcony by Corey. After Corey comes face to face with Michael, he runs into a homeless man who accosts Corey and then stabs the homeless man to death in self-defense. At a fast food place, Corey and Allison are harassed by Officer Doug Mullaney, Allison's former boyfriend. Doug follows Corey to the tunnel Michael is in and is lured inside. They struggle, but Corey is able to hold Doug, allowing Michael to slice his throat and stab him repeatedly. Dr. Mathis and Nurse Deb are about to be romantic when Corey breaks into Dr. Mathis's house and stabs the doctor repeatedly in the face with a corkscrew. Nurse Deb sees this and locks herself in the bedroom. She tries to call for help, but Michael comes out from hiding and pins Deb to a wall after being stabbed in the chest with a kitchen knife. Terry and his group, who have been bullying Corey, are lured into the junkyard by Corey. As they set up to catch Corey, one of the bullies, Billy, is stabbed in the eye with a drumstick. Corey drives a tow truck towards 2 of the teens and runs down one, Margot. The other, Stacy, is able to get out of the way of the truck, but is killed by Corey with a wrench. Ronald Cunningham, Corey's stepdad, is accidentally shot by Terry with a shotgun. Terry tries to help Margot, who's trapped under a chain-link fence, but is knocked down by Corey, who takes a blowtorch and melts Terry's face. Margot is killed when Corey crushes her skull, as she is still trapped. Joan Cunningham, Corey's mother, is stabbed to death by Corey with a kitchen knife. At the radio station, an unnamed female receptionist is stabbed to death by Corey, who has begun to wear Michael's mask. Willie the Kid, the DJ who had taunted Corey earlier, hears the receptionist's cries as he goes to check on her. He gets his head rammed twice against the recording booth until his jaw is broken by Corey, who then uses a pair of scissors to cut off his tongue. Corey breaks into Laurie's house, and when he thinks she has killed herself, He investigates only to be shot at by Laurie. He falls down the stairs and, as a way to make Allison believe Laurie killed him, stabs himself in the neck. He survives and tries to fight Michael for their knife. As they struggle, Corey's neck is snapped by Michael. The last and final death is Michael Myers. After being stabbed in the chest, through the hand, and being pinned against a counter with a fridge, he is stabbed in the neck and has his throat and wrist slashed by Laurie. She leads a procession of police and townsfolk to the junkyard. Here the shape is thrown into an industrial shredder. So much death and destruction with 15 kills, a fitting end to an iconic series. Here are my final thoughts on the trilogy from David Gordon Green. One aspect of this new trilogy that I really like is that these films kind of mirror the original and the first two sequels. The story beats and the themes echo in the new installments. Halloween 2018 is really about an escaped patient who goes back to the hometown where he murdered people, and his doctor is hunting him down. We get shots that are directly meant to mirror the first film, like when Laurie goes over the balcony and Michael finds she is gone. He causes a lot of mayhem and destruction, only for us to continue in the sequel. I really love the story crafted in this first installment. We see the trauma of just one night of terror and how it not only affects one generation, but passes on when not dealt with. The brutality of the kills is also something I was not expecting, but I really like it. Not in a sadistic manner, it just makes me feel like the weight of every stab, break, or gunshot, like you can feel it more than the previous sequels. The characters are great. Jamie Lee Curtis, as always, gives the role of Laurie such weight. It doesn't hurt that this is the 5th time she's played this character, canonically or not. And Judy Greer has had a long career as well, and she shines here and holds her own with Curtis. I love that they brought Michael back to being a force of nature, ditching the family ties, and that really helps in this regard. Overall, this is a solid sequel to Halloween. Halloween Kills has Laurie spend the whole film in the hospital, like Halloween 2. We also learn more of Michael's past and history, tracking him as he goes around killing. There is a point in each film where we see the town revolt against the evil that has invaded. We witness someone who isn't Myers get killed unnecessarily, first with a teenager, then with a separate escaped patient. Andy Matichak has a lot more work in this film. The previous film showed her struggle with trying to get her grandma and her mom to reconcile their past and her relationship troubles. Here we see that the death of her father has sparked a fire of vengeance that burns stronger as she meets back up with Cameron to try and do something. I think that bringing back the legacy characters was great. That Tommy, Lindsay, Lonnie, Marion, and Sheriff Brackett are just as haunted as Laurie. The inclusion of the mistaken death of the other escaped patient was needed to show how crazy this trauma has caused the town and will carry over into the next film. This is a great continuation of the previous film, the only path you could have taken. Halloween Ends has a story that doesn't really feel like a Halloween sequel, more like an anthology film. We start with a whole new character and what they are going through. The Silver Shamrock masks have shown up in all 3 films, but I feel like they stood out in this one. The font of the titles also cue us into thinking about Halloween 3 and understanding that this isn't your typical Halloween sequel, and whatever expectations you have should be tossed aside. The story of Corey and his corruption is one for the town of Haddonfield itself. The town has been haunted by the specter of Michael Myers for more than 40 years, and this has infected the town. I think this is the reason why Corey became infected with the evil. Someone has to carry on the trauma. The town coming together to dispose of Michael's body was also a cleansing that the town needed. In the end, Allison leaves Haddonfield, showing we can break and escape the cycle of pain. Honestly, I really like this film, and it caps off the series in a great way. The saga didn't need to go out with a huge bang, but it did need to solidly show the death of Michael Myers. Overall, these are a fantastic continuation of the Halloween saga, and I highly recommend them every Halloween season. Now let's go over the ranking of these films. Remember, guys, this is my personal opinion. I don't expect everyone to agree with me. I think maybe with the number one spot, but beyond that, I can't really vouch for anyone in particular, right? I'm just gonna go off of what I like and what I've come to find as the best and the worst. So I had to create a tier list to help me figure out my definitive rankings of the Halloween saga. Sometimes I need a visual to help me put my thoughts together. It really helped to organize and keep track of where and why I placed something where I did. And for this, I have 4 tiers. So it's going to be bad, good, great, and then super. Normally it would just be 3. I wouldn't include super, but we have some that stand out above and beyond. Also, I included the producer's cut of the 6th film, so there's going to be 14 films to rank. Let's work our way from the bottom to the top. So coming in on our 14th spot, which is the last of all of the Halloween sequels, of the anthologies, of the producer's cut, of all of them, right? I put Halloween 2 from 2009. That's the sequel to Rob Zombie's remake from 2007. I unfortunately just do not like this movie. I think it's really dumb and ridiculous. It is over the top. There's just a lot of dumb things that I think Rob Zombie does in his movies that I don't like including his wife. I don't know why she's in this one again. She's like some weird spirit vision thing with the white horse that keeps appearing to Michael and Laurie, and why would Laurie know who she is or even dream about her or whatever? Like, and it's like this weird psychic connection that like is from like the Curse of Michael Myers. I don't even know. Then also, I just don't get why everyone has to be a hillbilly and all of the like they're all grungy and like hillbilly-ish, and it's just, to me, that is not, I don't like that. That's just ridiculous and dumb. And I just wish he gave us a better sequel. And the fact that he's like, well, I'm going to make a sequel so that the studios don't ruin it. That's kind of dumb because you ruined your own sequel. I just don't like, you made Dr. Loomis so unbearable. You made Laurie unbearable. I think the only person in this movie that I liked was, I think, Danielle Harris. I did not like Brad Dourif in this. I feel like, why does he become a hick? I like, from the first one to this one, like, he looked like he wasn't like clean cut or anything, but I feel like his character completely, and like, I get, like, you could say like, oh well, they went through this trauma and blah blah blah, but it's not even like in the original, like, his daughter didn't even die. Like, she got stabbed a couple times, but she didn't even change from that. I mean, maybe she became a little bit gothier, but like, why the whole, he's just like a hick, and I don't know. Ridiculous. Next, we got in our 13th place, Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. If you go back and listen to that episode I did with about the Thorn trilogy, that's the part 2, you'll learn why this movie is trash. It, like, I like it only, I kind of only like it for sentimental reasons, right? With like rose tinted glasses, very tinted, but you see the flaws, you see the writing mistakes, the introduction of the Thorn symbol, the Man in Black, the weird psychic connection, you killing off the Ellie, I forget her name, the sister, the foster sister, just everything they did, other than Gerard did with this movie, is terrible. I don't understand why you would give this movie to this person who literally in front of you threw a script in the trash without even taking a look at it. There's just so much. There's like, he did so many reshoots, and they added in so many things, and they took away different things, and then they were like, oh, let's focus on this, or let's focus on that. And it's just dumb. It's ridiculous. It's over the top. I really wish, like, somebody had come in and said, let's put a pause on this. Let's take some time. We don't need to rush this out. It literally came out like a year later than the previous installment, and you should have just taken your time. It would have resulted in maybe like at least a better movie. Like you could have worked out certain things, especially with the script. You could have at least started to explain things like with the Man in Black. But the fact that you're like, let's just leave it for another one, and leave it for another movie, they did, and it turned out for the worst. I mean, just because that plot line you had to kind of continue with, and then you had to, someone else had to come up with a story, and they did their best, but obviously this movie is just not that great. And now in our number 12 spot, and this will be the conclusion for the bad section, it's Halloween Resurrection. And obviously this movie was made when they really didn't know what to do next with the Halloween franchise. And I mean, one thing that they do is they kill off Laurie Strode right at the beginning to kind of prove a point, to be like, oh, look, see, no one's safe, not even Laurie. Although I feel like if you had her for just a little bit and you wanted to kill her off, you could have done something in the end with her. You didn't need to kill her off in the beginning. And the whole thing with the you're using this technology on the internet at a time when it was in its infancy. And I think now you could have probably made this movie and it may have worked, but I don't think it works back in like the late 90s to early 2000s, just because the technology wasn't there for it yet. And there's just so much in this movie, like, it's just ridiculous and over the top. It's just so dumb. And the fact that it's just about characters that we have no connection to, that we've never seen before, and then just things with like Busta Rhymes when he kicks him into the wires and starts a fire and all of that, it's just all dumb. And it's not super terrible, but it's a product of its time. It's a product of the Weinsteins and Miramax and just wanting to, and Dimension Films, and then all just wanting to make money. And you can tell with this, they were just like, let's just pump out another sequel. Alright, so now we're getting into the good. There's 4 here. And we're going to start with the number 11 spot, which is Halloween 2007 from Rob Zombie. I put it here just because it is a good remake. It's a fine Halloween film. I mean, there's things about it that I like. Even though I do like Michael Myers is just like a force of nature, I do like that they he did kind of expand the background, and he gave him a little bit more, and like it's more of like what we would see from like a true serial killer. Like we see him hurting like little animals, and like the way he just like has like no emotion towards people except for like one, and or like his mom and his little sister, but like everyone else he just kind of hates. And we see like just like what he has to go through in his normal life. There's aspects of it like the whole hill. Again, I bring it up. Just this kind of like, I don't understand why everyone has to be so grungy and just so like, I get that that's his own aesthetic, but he applies it to his movies, and it just is like, when is this supposed to be taking place too? Because I feel like if this is set in like the 60s, why is everyone so hippie? I guess there was hippies in the 60s, and I do like how brutal he made him, and I like that they decided to bring back Danielle Harris. I think she was great in this. I think there's and I like Malcolm McDowell. I think he plays Dr. Loomis, at least in this first one, as compared to the second one. I think he plays him pretty good. I think it makes it, I feel like he's more like a real psychiatrist rather than like, I'm not saying like anything bad about Donald Pleasance's performance, but like we see him trying to help him. Like he tried and tried, and there's just only so long you can try and help someone that you're like, well, I can't really do too much. Although he does capitalize on like the whole situation. But and then like Brad Dourif, he's great as Sheriff Brackett. I think a lot of the like peripheral characters are really good. Michael's really good. I think Tyler Mane did a pretty good job. I don't know if I like that they made him into such a big hulking figure like a Jason, but I do like his performance. I think it's pretty good. I don't know. It's fine. It's like I said. It's good. It's here in the good spot. It's not bad, but it's not great or anything. Moving on to the 10 spot. Okay, right here is going to get a little contentious. So I got at number 10, Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers, but the theatrical cut. So hear me out. The theatrical cut is great, only because I have to, like, it's the same thing with the rose-tinted glasses, right? Like, I love it because that is the first Halloween I got to see in theaters. Like, that's the one that I remember being a kid, and I remember watching the trailer, the very first trailer for it, the one where it was still called Halloween 666 or whatever, The Curse of Michael Myers. I remember seeing that trailer, and I remember being so excited when we went to go see it because, like I said, Halloween is like my favorite. And I was like, what, like 4 or 5 at the time? And this is like my favorite horror franchise, and finally they're making a new one, and it's The Curse of Michael Myers. There's a lot of things that you can say about it, like from Weinstein getting a bunch of 14-year-old kids to boys to give their response to the film and what they want to see. So there's things that are like cut up and chopped up, and it looks kind of music video-ish, and there's like the filters that they use are kind of like more bluer, and the music that they don't really use a lot of the original music. There's a lot of guitars, and then like the stuff with like Donald Pleasance, unfortunately passing, and then the reshoots and everything, and then having to cobble together a whole story, and then it just kind of has this kind of like ending that just kind of goes nowhere, and like they just have him screaming, and then the jack-o'-lantern blows out. Ooh, what does that mean? And the fact that we don't continue from there, like nothing continues from the story. We don't get to learn more about like the cult or what happened to any of them. And like, did Michael apparently escapes because his mask is just there. But there's a lot of things that are bad about this movie. But like I said, it's still one of my favorites because I just remember being a kid. So with that, let's lead right into the number 9 slot, which is Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers, the producer's cut. And I only put it above it because I feel like this is closer to what they wanted. And I understand that when Donald Pleasance originally read whatever script they had originally planned, he loved it. He was like, yes, this is what I want you to do. This is what I wanted from the franchise. And that got him aboard because he didn't want to do another one. He did not want to do another Halloween film, but they convinced him with whatever script they had, which I feel like this is probably closer to what they had. The cult seems a little bit more sinister. The fact that like Jamie like survives a little bit longer and explains why like certain characters over there, like Dr. Loomis is in the hospital for no reason apparently in the theatrical cut, but in this one it makes sense because he's there to visit Jamie. They're like a lot of the scenes that were like cut up and like made into like this kind of music video kind of style flash thing, they got rid of all that. And I love like the dream sequence that they had where Jamie's like in the hospital and she's dreaming, and it's like the black and white sequence. That's pretty cool. I like that. I like that they expand on the Thorn a little bit and that we see more about the cult and stuff. It is a little ridiculous that Tommy's able to stop Michael with a ring of whatever like the runes are and whatever like the magic, and you could tell that they were trying to maybe like do some kind of like special effect or maybe something like that. It just doesn't work. And then the passing on of the Thorn to Dr. Loomis, even though it's like, how he's already, how old this guy is, how are you gonna pass, and you want him to keep coming back, and then Michael just kind of gets away. It is a mess unto itself, but at least it's a little bit more coherent than the other one. It's not like great, like way better in any respect, but at least it's like, okay, that makes a little bit more sense. They use a lot of the original music too, like that Carpenter made for the first film, and I think it works a little bit better. At number 8 and rounding out our good column, place, whatever, is Halloween H2O 20 years later. And I put it here because it is just a good Halloween movie. They brought Jamie Lee Curtis back for the 20-year anniversary. They got Janet Leigh to come back. And unfortunately, Donald Pleasance isn't back because he passed away. But we do get to see Marion Chambers again. And we do get to see Jamie at least starting to deal with the trauma like we get in the David Gordon Green's trilogy. We get her dealing with that. But we get her at least starting to deal with it in this one. I know they don't connect, but you know what I mean? Like, we get to see her, like, she had to sacrifice her life, move from her home, use a whole new name, and she set up a whole new life, and still it haunts her. And even though it's been 20 years, she hasn't heard anything about Michael or anything in these 20 years, but it still haunts her. It's still there. It's the specter of Michael. And I think it's fun. I think there's parts of it that are a little, sometimes it can get a little boring, but I do love the idea of her, like, deciding, you know what, I'm going to take him out once and for all. And she sends the kids off, and then, like, the last portion of it is really where it's like, that's the movie that you want to see, where she goes after him. And then it gives us an ending where we thought she'd killed Michael. Like, we thought Michael Myers was dead, when she just not, like takes that, axe and knocks chops his head off. And it's, oh man, it would have been so cool to just end it right there. And it's a fine movie. It's not anything spectacular. There's nothing to write home about, but it is a good one to watch during Halloween. And it's a good Halloween movie. So now we get to our great, and starting off at number 7. Halloween Kills. So Halloween Kills is a great Halloween film. We get this continuation from this Halloween that was very brutal and very, like, more real and gritty, right? And now we get to see more of what he's going to do, and we get to see more of the townsfolk, and we get to see, like, where he's going with this rampage. And we get to see, like, it's not just about Laurie. It's about, like, him coming home and him just being this force of nature that just sweeps through the town of Haddonfield. And I love that they brought back, I mean, obviously the people from the first one, from Halloween 2018, but that they brought back Kyle Richards, right? And they brought back Charles Cyphers for that was Lee Brackett. He hadn't been back to the series since the second one, or the original second one. And I'm glad that they kind of expanded on the characters, and so we got to see, like, how the town's been dealing with this, and it's just so good. It's just a great, like, Halloween film. We get to see him just be brutal. Michael just be brutal. He butchers, like, all those firefighters at the very start of the film, and we get to follow him as he just goes through. And when he gets home and he finds that people are there, living there, he just is like, no, I'm not having this. And then we get to see the town take its rage out on him, right? And we think that they've overcome him, and we're like, wow, they finally came together and they stopped this evil, like, evil dies tonight type of thing. But then he just gets back up and he murders everyone. And I like that they expanded further on to about, like, Laurie and who, like, she's been with, and that her and Hawkins had this kind of relationship, but nothing kind of went anywhere until now. Obviously, like, they're having to get back together, not in, like, having to join forces to stop this. And this movie is just so good. It's like there's nothing really that makes it stand out, but, like, it is like a great Halloween film. Alright, at number 6, we got Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. And this one is right here with the greats, because it not only brought Michael back, this was literally the return of Michael Myers. We got to see a true Halloween sequel that was, okay, we're going to get invested in some new characters, and at least they were like great characters, you know, like Jamie's character, Danielle Harris, is amazing in this. She does a great job for just being a child actress, bringing back Donald Pleasance again, and we get to see this continuation of this great actor, and one of the ones, at least one of the films that he shines in, besides the first two, and we get just a solid Halloween film. It feels like Halloween. Like whenever I watch this, it feels like I'm in like October. I'm in the fall. The Halloween season is here. And I just remember being a kid and watching this and this being, and so that might be a little bit of why I put it in Grace, but it is just a good, like, it is a good solid film. Yeah, maybe the masks is a little off, and like the padding on him makes him look a little weird and bulky, but he still got it. Like, he knocks the power out of the whole town. He makes a posse join together to get everyone, and he uses a shotgun, not in the way that a shotgun would be used, as like he stabs someone with a shotgun. It's awesome, and I'm glad that they made this. Like they were like, let's kind of return it back to how it should be after, you know, Season of the Witch, you know, disappointed people, and they wanted more Michael. It's like, we're gonna give it to him, and we got this, and whatever it devolves into with the next one and the one after. This at least, you know, brought back Michael and was like, see, he can be great again, and Halloween as a series can be just as good. Alright, now we're getting into the top 5. At number 5 is Halloween Ends. And I know that's probably going to be controversial for everyone. Everyone's going to be like, what, you put Halloween Ends right there? And it's like, yep, I put it right here because I feel like this is a film, and I kind of hinted at it. I think it's going to become one that we're going to look back on and be like, yes, this was a great film, like how we look back on with like Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, where it's underrated, where I think people just misunderstood it, and like what David Gordon Green and Danny McBride were trying to tell with this. It's really about trauma and how trauma endures, and it goes beyond just one generation. It goes to not just affect the generation after, but then the generation after, and somewhere you have to break that cycle. And also it's about how evil doesn't stop, right? Evil spreads, and you have to learn how to fight that evil that's spreading, and you can stop it, but you got to learn where it's going and who's being infected. And we see that the town itself can infect these people and cause that evil to spread. And like I said, maybe I'm reading too much and too deep into this film, but I think it's just really good. It, like, yeah, there's not that much Michael in it. Michael Myers isn't really, he's barely in it. Like, he's in like the ending, and that's about it, and he gets killed. But that's, I think, what we needed from a Halloween film. We needed to see like something else, and I think that's why this works so well. We needed to learn more about just the characters and not Michael, because he is just a force of evil. He's just a force there. Like, we see him in the series. He's just been living there. I really do think people will look back and be like, yes, this was a great film. So let's move to number 4. Our number 4, and to top off the like great section, is Halloween 2, 1981. And I put it here because I don't think it is a super film. It is, though, like, if you were just ranking the other ones, like from just great, good, and bad, this is the top of the pile, because this is just a great, like, this is the first sequel. This is the first time we got to see any kind of continuation to Halloween, to any kind of continuation of Michael Myers. And what it does so well is it brings back Dr. Loomis, it brings back Jamie, it brings everybody back, and this time we get to see like more of just what he did that night, and like we learn more about the characters. We learn like the mythos expands, and if John Carpenter had his way, this would have been the end, because the way it ends with the explosion is like, that's supposed to be it. That's what, Michael's just dead, because he was just this force. And yes, maybe he he put in the like plot point that he regrets, where like they're brother and sister, and when you really like sit and think about it, like how does that work? Because like she remembers like her mom saying like, or a foster mom, whatever, adopted mom, saying like she's not her kid, but then like I don't know, when did the Myers have her, whatever, right? You gotta ignore all that, but it starts introducing like a lot of the things that we'll see in later installments, like with like hospital stuff, like her being chased in like the hospital, just him walking through the town, like killing people, more so than, because in the first one we didn't really see that. We didn't really see him walking around the neighborhoods and just going into people's houses randomly and killing people, and that's what he did in this one. And I think this one stands out as probably it's not good enough to be like, oh, in the top 3 or anything, but it is still good. It is in the top 5. It's a good film. Now we're moving on to our super spots. So in number 3, Halloween 2018. And I put this one here because it is just a great return to form. After 40 years of Halloween, we finally get a Halloween that is like, okay, we get to see, I mean, we've seen this before in some other ones, like Laurie dealing with the trauma of her past, but we get to see it as it moves past her and into like her dealing with her daughter, and how her daughter was taken away because she was like, you need to learn to defend yourself, because I had to go through this, so you need to go through this. And then her daughter passing to her granddaughter and being like, no, we don't need to do this, like we need to live our lives. And her daughter trying to reconcile the generational gap that is like this trauma that's sitting there, and it's just eating at both people and driving a wedge between them. And then we get to see more modern things like podcasting and like how the world has changed since 1978. And man, just like we get to see Michael Myers again as this brutal force of nature, as he just goes through the town and he wreaks havoc, right? And the only time we get to see him like show any kind of like compassion is like when there's like the baby, and there's a scene with the baby, and I was like, oh my god, is he really going to kill this baby? Like that would be like showing him as like no humanity left. But at least he doesn't, or at least we don't see that. If he does do that, I don't think he does. I think he moves on from the baby, but still it's like, whoa, that's kind of going a little far. But like the characters are amazing. Judy Greer is amazing. She's always been amazing, and I love that people are finally like, oh yeah, Judy Greer's great. It's like, yeah, she's always been great. I love just everyone else too. Like Andy Manichak, she does a great job. I think she does better in the other 2 sequels because she has more to do. She doesn't really have too much to do in this, except for like, talk to them kind of in some scenes and bring them together, but that's about it. I think really it's between the Laurie and Karen, and we get to see them, and then we get to see at the end like what Laurie has taken the steps to. She's like, I'm gonna catch him. This time I'm not gonna run from him. I'm not gonna hide. I'm going after this son of a bitch, and I'm gonna make sure he's stopped. And that's what her, and then Karen, even though she didn't like the life that she was living with Laurie, obviously she learned enough that like it helped her to stand up with Laurie and Allison, and they're able to come together and to trap this evil and what they think is going to end it now. But I mean, we get to see that it keeps going, but like for that one film, at least they're like, we're stopping it now. And we get to number 2 right here, and this is another one that I think a lot of people will be like, what? Oh, I think a lot of people will probably either disagree, hard stop, disagree, and be like, no, this one is not better than that one because this or that. And or they may be like, okay, I can kind of concede this one, but I don't know about that one. And this one too, I think, for most people, will probably say, what, that one shouldn't even be on here. This one shouldn't even be listed amongst the Halloween films. It's like, but it's a Halloween film, and it gets counted. And honestly, if this movie was released separately by itself, they hadn't tried to connect it to Halloween at all in any way, any shape or form, I think it would have just been a solid movie out there that would have been like, oh, it's and honestly they should have just called it Silver Shamrock and released it by itself, and it would have been like a kind of under the radar, but then an underrated like film that people would have seen later and been like, you know what, this was a pretty good film. But I think because it had the Halloween name, I think that's what hurt it a lot. I mean, not hurt it in the way that nobody went to go see it. I think it hurt it in the opposite way, is that people went to go see it and they expected more Michael, and what they got was a more sci-fi inspired drama about, you know, this evil toy maker who's like, I want to essentially see the world burn. I'm gonna kill these kids for no reason other than, remember we used to do it back in the old days, back in Ireland, we used to sacrifice people for Samhain. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. And I think it works so well by itself, and the catchy jingle of the 8 more days till Halloween. I think that works so well. It gets stuck in your brain, and it just feels like another John Carpenter film. Like, you can tell he was involved, at least like on the production side. Like he came in and was like, hey, everybody from the first two is going to be on this basically, and we're gonna help you out. And it feels like, because it was written like with the help, at least like with John Carpenter and Deborah Hill. And Deborah Hill is one who, she needs to be seen more as an inspiration and as behind the scenes for these films, because at least for the first like 3, because she did a lot to help with these films. But this movie, like just seeing Dr. Chalice and like him dealing with these masks instead of something more supernatural than just this person who is like going on a rampage and slashing people up. It's like, no, this is wickeder than that. This is someone who's intentionally going out of their way to cause mass damage to children of all, not just adults who are just like partying and having sex or whatever. These are children who are wearing masks and going and celebrating a holiday for kids. And it's just so good. It's such a great film, and it's so ambiguous in the end too, as to whether or not he stops the channels from airing, because he gets a couple of them to stop, but then we're left with that kind of cliffhanger. It's, oh god, I'm like, I hate that I never watched it as a kid, and it took me so long. I feel like that's what it was for a lot of people, is that it took a long time for them to go back, watch it. Because I remember when I did watch it, because I was curious about it. I was like, why have I never seen the third Halloween? And I watched it and I was like, oh, this is kind of dumb. But I was like 6 or 7. And then I remember later I watched it again as like a teenager. And I was like, you know what? It's not terrible. And then watching it again and again in like my teens to my early 20s, and I'm like, you know what? This actually is a great movie. Like, it's very underrated. Like, there's a lot to this. Like, that I think as a child who, like, or anyone who was watching these Halloween films, and they're like, well, it doesn't have Michael. And it's like, okay, it doesn't need to. That's not the point of the film. It's like, well, but like the argument is, but it's not like, it doesn't have Michael Myers in it. Where's Haddonfield? Where's this? Where's that? It's like, it doesn't need those things to be a good movie. I think that John Carpenter should have at least kept up with that anthology with the second one. See, I think him giving us a sequel to Halloween with Michael Myers set everyone's expectations to expect that, a Halloween film comes with Michael Myers. And that's what we get now too. But there was a point in history where we could have, from then on, been like, they're just different movies about Halloween. And I think if you did that now, it would have worked. But back then, I think audiences just wanted more of the same. And they weren't ready for something different. And this really is something different and something set apart. And I think it stands above a lot of the other ones. And now we get to number 1. The top of the top of all of them, right? The one that stands above all of the rest, the one that outshines everyone else. And I think you all knew what it was going to be. It's Halloween 1978, of course. This is the original slasher film. I mean, not the original, like Peeping Tom and Psycho came out way before this, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out before this. But I think this truly, in the zeitgeist, exploded the horror genre into being like, you can make a movie off of nothing and make $1 billion. Check yes, please. And I think that's, obviously we saw through the 80s, what did we get? This glut of just slasher films and people just trying to do the same thing Halloween did, but you can't beat Halloween. Every year you see it for Halloween. The season, you watch it and it works. It just works. It gets you in the mood for Halloween. Yeah, sure, it's supposed to be set in the Midwest, but they shot in California, and you can tell, but it still feels like Halloween time. To me, it feels like this, and that may be, again, like a lot of this could be just like my nostalgia for like childhood, but honestly, rewatching it now too, I'm like, man, this is just so good. It's set so well. The pacing is really well. The characters are pretty well, okay, rounded. Like I think Laurie more and Dr. Loomis more so than everyone else. But like, this is the film that inspired me a lot, and it's the film that when I was in film school, our teacher was like, hey, what you should do is take a film and just deconstruct it. Like, take note cards and write down everything you can for each scene. And that's what I did. So I took a bunch of note cards, different colored note cards, and for, like I did, like for the scene, I wrote down, like, this is what happens in the scene. Then for another note, I was like, this is the music that's in the scene. Okay, here's the props they used. Oh, here's the camera style that they use. Here's the shots they use. Here's the transitions they use. And I went scene by scene and little by little, and I broke down the film. I had like a whole stack of just different colored cards of just different things of like the audio of the film, the different the actors, like lines that stood out, things that I saw, like the props, the things that they, like the costuming that they wore, things like that. Like I went through this whole thing and I was like, this is how I construct a film. It's based off of Halloween. It's always going to be based off of Halloween because that's how I broke down and learned how a film is made. Because I went there and I deconstructed. I'd already learned how to make, short films, and I learned how to put stories together, and like you need like a beginning, middle, and end. But this was really the one that I was like, okay, let's take these elements, break down the whole film, and put it back together. And that's how I build movies now. This movie has just had that big of an impact on me. I had a Michael Myers doll that my brother got me for my birthday one time, or for Christmas. That's how much this movie has influenced me over time, and that's why it's here. It's one of the first horror films I remember, like I loved so much. It's stood the test of time so much. Look at it. It's 1978 to now. Like, we're in 5 more years, it's going to be 50 years old. And I believe that even then, in 5 more years, we're still going to be talking about this movie 50 years after. And I think that's what this movie did so well. John Carpenter and Deborah Hill. Deborah Hill deserves a lot of credit too. They both gave us a movie that is just dripping with just awe and inspiration. And I'm so glad that, you know, they were both given a chance to put this together, even for the budget they had, for the people that they were able to get Donald Pleasance to be in this. They got Jamie Lee Curtis, who now is an Oscar winner, and this movie just is going to stand the testament of time. Halloween is the best Halloween of all the Halloween of the whole saga. The Halloween saga will never truly die as long as we keep watching the movies. It doesn't matter if you only like the original Halloween from 1978, or you love the different paths you can take with the sequels, or that Rob Zombie may have given you a definitive version of The Shape. We can all enjoy these movies to a certain degree, and nobody can take that away from you. Is this the last time we'll see Michael Myers? With how profitable the movies are, I don't think it'll be the last we see of the franchise. But for now, I think we can all sit back and enjoy what we have and explore the movies that we have, right? Not having to worry about, well, something else is coming up. We can just sit back and know that Halloween ended. But you do have to remember, evil doesn't die. It changes shape. That wraps up our 5-part look into the Halloween saga. This took a long time because I wanted to bring you all as much information as I could, and I didn't want to leave anything out because I know I'd want as much of the story behind these films as anyone else. Plus, we had a little bit of technical difficulties towards the end, so thank you all for listening, and please subscribe. If you like what you hear, you get every new episode downloaded when you subscribe. You got any strange or mysterious or unexplained stories? Are they fact? Did you craft a story yourself? If you would like us to read your stories, you can email them to horrorboxpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to read them on the podcast. We'd also like to post those stories to our socials on Instagram and on TikTok. You can listen to both at Horrorbox Podcast. That's for Instagram and TikTok. We also have news and updates on there for you guys. Also, like mini reviews on TikTok. I've been trying to get those on there as well. One last thing. If you like the podcast and would like to support us, buy me a coffee. You can buy me a coffee at coffee.com/horrorboxpodcast. It would really help out. We'll see you next time and hear what comes out from the horror box.